Hello Mission Impossible fans, and welcome back to Nerd Doc. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 is now in theaters, and that means it's time to break down the ending and cover the main plot points. There will be spoilers for Dead Reckoning in this video. This is your spoiler warning. You can find our other Dead Reckoning videos in the description below, including what we expect from Dead Reckoning Part 2 and what we know about the main villains. There are chapter timestamps, so you can jump around the video as you wish, and as always, the movie is still in theaters, so we can only use footage from the trailers. Please bear with us there. If you have any questions about the film, or just want to give us your opinion on it, leave a comment below. Dead Reckoning starts to delve into Ethan Hunt's past before he was part of the IMF. However, that does not mean you need to have watched the 6 previous movies to understand what's going on. It's helpful to know who some of the main characters are, such as Benji, Luther, Ilsa, and maybe White Widow, but the movie provides enough information on these characters to easily understand who they are without having seen any of the previous films. The basic premise of the movie is that an AI has gone rogue and is threatening the entire world. However, there's a special cruciform key that has been split into 2 halves. Whichever nation of the world ends up with the key will control the AI and essentially rule the world. The only way to validate the authenticity of each half of the key is to pair it with an authentic other half, so you need one half of the key in order to validate the other half. Ethan wants to find the key and destroy the AI, while the rest of the world wants to find the key and hold on to it so they can control the AI. The AI knows all of this and wants to remove Ethan from the picture since Ethan is the only person who wants to destroy it and the only way the AI sees itself losing. To do this, the AI employs Gabriel, someone from Ethan's past before he was part of the IMF. Gabriel is joined by Paris, a French assassin who works with other nameless thugs to find Ethan and attempt to remove him from the equation. Unfortunately for Ethan, since the US also wants to hold onto the key and control the AI, and that goes against what Ethan wants to do, this makes him a target for the US as well, as they send Jasper Briggs and his team to find Ethan and obtain the key at any cost. Jasper reports directly to Kittredge, the former director of the IMF, who in turn reports to Denlinger, head of national security. In short, everyone wants to find the 2 halves of the key and control the AI, except for Ethan, who wants to destroy the AI, so everyone is after Ethan, including the AI and the US government. The movie opens with the Russian sub Sevastopol positioned near the Arctic. This is a top-secret stealth sub that has already approached every navy on the planet and gone undetected, nearly completing their initial mission to test how effective the stealth technology can be. To activate the stealth tech, the Russians on board use the previously mentioned cruciform key, which the commanding officers keep around their necks. The sub's radar picks up an American sub nearby, which seemingly shoots a torpedo at them. The Russians take all necessary countermeasures and fire their own torpedo, but then the US sub and the torpedo it fired suddenly vanish. As the Russians begin to stand down, the torpedo they shot turns around and sinks the sub, killing everyone on board, with the key floating up to the top of the ice-covered waters, still attached to the commanding officer's neck. This is where Ilsa Faust comes into play. She's one of Ethan's former lovers and has been disavowed by MI6, but her former friends at the agency know where one half of the key is located. Ilsa retrieves it, but assassins that were hired by the US are now after her. It's at this point that Ethan catches up to her, assists in taking out the assassins, fakes Ilsa's death, and obtains her half of the key. Ethan and his team head to the Abu Dhabi airport where they're supposed to meet a buyer who has the other half of the key. This is where Jasper and his team come into play, fanning out across the airport in search of Ethan. This is also our first introduction to Grace, who pickpockets the buyer just before Ethan gets to him. This causes Ethan to follow Grace, interacting with her and discovering that the buyer had a fake half of the key. Ethan eventually ends up losing his half of the key as Grace pickpockets him, who then boards a flight to Rome without him. At this point, everyone knows Grace has the half of the key Ethan originally had, and she's detained when she arrives in Rome. Ethan shows up pretending to be her lawyer, but Jasper and his team follow them there as well. Ethan and Grace escape, which kicks off a lengthy car chase sequence that also involves Paris, Gabriel's assassin, who ends up killing most of Jasper's team. By the end of their time in Rome, Jasper is left with only one other person from his team alive to help him. It turns out the White Widow from Mission Impossible Fallout was the person who has the other half of the key, and the person who hired Grace. The White Widow is throwing a party in Venice, so Ethan and Ilsa attend the event in hopes of catching up with Grace and possibly obtaining both halves of the key. Jasper and his sole remaining assistant crash the party as well. Meanwhile, Gabriel has been lurking this whole time. He was at the airport in Abu Dhabi with his presence masked by the AI, who erased almost any trace of him from the security cameras. He also showed up in Rome, and now he appears again at the party in Venice, saying that either Grace or Ilsa has to die that night because that's what the AI demands. This is because the AI wants to hurt Ethan Hunt, the only person who wants to kill the AI. Now, you could probably ask why an AI wants to go through all of this to crush Ethan's morale instead of just killing him instantly, but I guess even an AI wants to have fun. Although a more likely reasoning is that this is all part of the deal the AI made with Gabriel to get his assistance. Since Gabriel has a past with Ethan in which he caused Ethan great pain, he wants to repeat that again right now. We never actually get full details of what happened between Gabriel and Ethan, but it's hinted that Gabriel killed one of Ethan's former lovers and is partially responsible for the situation that initially forced Ethan into the IMF. Gabriel ends up killing Ilsa that night as she fights to protect Grace, and Ethan is occupied fighting Paris. This leads into the end of the film, where White Widow is taking the Orient Express train and will deliver her half of the key to her buyer. Ethan's plan is to disguise Grace as White Widow and himself as White Widow's brother Zola. This would allow them to get White Widow's half of the key, combine it with Grace's half, then escape the train with the completed key. Unfortunately, the mask-making machine breaks after only completing the White Widow's mask. This forces Ethan and his team to change plans. Grace goes on the train alone, incapacitating the White Widow, taking her place, and meeting up with the buyer, who just so happens to be Kittredge from the US government. Meanwhile, Ethan has to make his own way onto the train by parachuting off a cliff. During this series of events, it's revealed that Dindlinger, head of national security, is also on board the train and has arranged a meeting with Paris, and in turn, Gabriel as well. Dindlinger reveals that it was the US who created the AI, secretly placing it on board the Russian sub. It was only supposed to help the US track the sub, but the AI went rogue, sank the submarine, and then started threatening the rest of the world. Dindlinger claims to be the only person with knowledge of where the sunken Russian sub is located. In addition, he knows the only way to stop the AI is to access the server on the sunken sub where the original source code for the AI is located. This is basically where the AI began, and also where it can be killed. If someone can find the sunken sub and access that server, they'll be able to use the source code there to destroy the AI. It's not exactly explained how this would work, but our best guess is that Luther will end up creating a virus using that source code, which will remove any trace of the AI from the internet, completely destroying it. Either way, Dindlinger is the only person with this knowledge, so of course, Gabriel kills him. Dindlinger thought that being the only person with this knowledge would force Gabriel to work with him to gain control of the AI. However, Gabriel doesn't want to control the AI. He wants to hurt Ethan and spread chaos across the world. Allowing the US government to take control of the AI doesn't help Gabriel in any way, which is where Dindlinger miscalculated, costing him his life. After killing Dindlinger, Gabriel stabs Paris and predicts the future, saying that she will betray him to Ethan. This is knowledge passed down from the AI, who has calculated every possible move and how to counter each one. The AI instructed Gabriel to leave Paris mortally wounded, but not yet dead, telling her that Ethan will save her life following her betrayal. Grace, now disguised as White Widow, meets up with Kittredge. With no sign of Ethan yet, Grace starts working for herself and tells Kittredge that she has new terms for their deal. In addition to the $100 million she will get paid for the key, she also wants what is essentially full immunity for Grace. While Grace started as a simple thief, she is now wanted by every nation in the world due to her involvement with Ethan in obtaining the key. Ethan offered her entrance into the IMF, but now she thinks she may be able to use Kittredge and this key as a way to get her life back without having to join the IMF. Kittredge agrees and begins transferring the money to her account. For some reason, this is shown as a slow-moving visual progression on a cell phone because digital transfers and encryptions aren't instant in the world of Mission Impossible. This gives Grace plenty of time to think about her actions, so of course she ends up changing her mind and canceling the transfer. She wants to do what's right, and she'll feel a lot better about herself knowing the key is in the right hands. Grace says this to Kittredge, who thinks he now has the key without having to pay for it, but she really means Ethan's hands as she pickpockets Kittredge, taking the completed key. As a thief, you'd think she would have completed the transfer, then pickpocketed the key anyway, but she had a complete change of heart to the point where taking the money from the US would likely cause her more harm than good, given that the US would be after her for the money, the key, and likely her life. Throughout the movie, Grace has been running from Ethan, and every time he's caught up to her and protected her. At this point, she finally trusts him and would rather see him get the key than the US government. But it's also around this time that the real White Widow finally wakes up and sends Zola and one of his henchmen after Grace. Just as Grace is about to be killed by the henchman, Ethan crashes through the window of the train, saving Grace, but losing the key to Gabriel, who picks it up off the ground and leaves. This leads to a confrontation on the top of the train between Ethan and Gabriel, while Grace attempts to stop the now runaway train. It turns out that Grace can't stop the train because it was previously sabotaged by Gabriel, who ends up getting away by jumping off of the train and onto a prearranged truck with a bit of cushioning in the back. We'll ignore the fact that physics don't work like that and Gabriel would be dead or severely injured, but either way, Ethan ended up pickpocketing Gabriel before he jumped off the train, so Ethan now has the full key and Gabriel has nothing. But before Gabriel realizes what's happened, he starts a 3-minute timer to detonate explosives on an upcoming bridge, dooming the train. Ethan and Grace work to uncouple the train cars and eventually get saved by Paris, who does betray Gabriel and the AI just as predicted. Paris ends up telling Ethan the name of the submarine, but nothing else, as she passes out on the verge of death. Jasper and his team help save Paris as Ethan gets away by himself. Kittredge confronts Grace, who formally joins the IMF. Ethan meets up with Benji, full key in hand, and the credits begin to roll. There's no mid or post-credit scene in the movie, but the sequel is already done with principal photography and is currently in post-production with a release date of June 28, 2024. So what did you think of Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1? Did it feel like a complete movie to you, or are you upset that you have to wait until next year to see how the story concludes? And how do you think Gabriel connects to Ethan's past? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. For now, that wraps up this video. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with someone who loves Tom Cruise and Mission Impossible. The device you're watching this video on will self-destruct in 5 seconds.